case it isn't clear, just from watching the snippet, that was the sound of sirens. We should note today's attack on Israel ended shortly after it began. The Israeli military said most of the missiles were intercepted and says that as of now, there were no immediate reports of casualties. The attack comes one day after Israeli forces launched a ground invasion into Lebanon aimed at hobbling Hezbollah. Iran's Revolutionary Guard said that today's attack was retaliation for the assassinations of Hezbollah's leader last Saturday. And a senior White House official reiterated that the United States will help defend Israel, a sentiment that Secretary of State Antony Blinken echoed a short time ago.
A few hours ago, Iran, for the second time in the space of 5 months, launched a direct attack on Israel, including some 200 ballistic missiles. This is totally unacceptable, and the entire world should condemn it. Initial reports suggest that Israel, with the active support of the United States and other partners, effectively defeated this attack. We have demonstrated once again our commitment to Israel's defense. We'll remain in very close touch with Israel and other partners in the region in the hours and days ahead.
It is worth repeating that today's events shine a light on the fragile nature of the Middle East and the foreign policy challenges the current and next American president will face. Today, President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris convened 2 meetings with their national security team in the Situation Room. The president directed the U.S. military to aid Israel's defense against Iranian attacks and to shoot down missiles targeting Israel. They also reviewed preparations to protect any U.S. personnel in the region. Moments ago, Vice President Harris spoke about today's attack on Israel. Watch.
Today, Iran launched approximately 200 ballistic missiles at Israel in a reckless and brazen attack. I condemn this attack unequivocally. I'm clear-eyed. Iran is a destabilizing, dangerous force in the Middle East, and today's attack on Israel only further demonstrates that fact. Earlier today, I was in the Situation Room with President Biden and our national security team as we monitored the attack in real time and ensured that the protection of U.S. personnel in the region is paramount.
As we've said, this is a fluid situation, one that is certain to come up in tonight's debate. It's where we start the hour with NBC News foreign correspondent Erin McLaughlin in Jerusalem. Erin, what are you seeing and hearing and learning?
Well, Nicole, we just heard from the Israeli prime minister addressing Israel in the wake of this attack from Iran. In that address, he said, quote, "Iran made a big mistake tonight, and it will pay for it." I was just on a Zoom call with an Israeli military spokesperson, Nadav Shoshani. He said he was in an undisclosed location in central Israel, which had been hit by a missile. He said it had been hit by shrapnel from one of the missiles, and he was giving me a tour of the destruction. He said it was a residential area. He was also pointing to one of the missiles hitting a school in central Israel, as well as a number of other locations, both in central Israel as well as southern Israel. He was describing this as the largest ballistic missile attack ever launched on Israel in Israel's history. They are taking this attack extraordinarily seriously. We know there was a meeting tonight in Tel Aviv at the military headquarters where they're calibrating a potential response. What that response will be, we do not know. Shoshani telling me it will be a political decision on the part of the Israeli prime minister. Nicolle.
Erin, former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren, questioned on this program whether the shooting, which resulted in the death of 8 Israelis and injuries for 9 others, may have been connected or coordinated. Do you have any reporting on the details, or where is the investigation into that?
Yeah, that investigation, Nicolle, is underway. At the moment, there has been no connection made between the attack that unfolded in Jaffa, just near Tel Aviv earlier tonight, and the barrage of missiles, more than 180 missiles that were launched from Iran. No connection has been made by Israeli officials as yet. What we do know is that attack happened just shortly before that missile strike. In fact, I was on the air describing that attack as we were getting that information in, and then we heard the siren sound, and then the missiles fell. According to Israeli police, 2 suspected gunmen were riding the metro there in Jaffa. They got out of the metro. At least one of the gunmen began to indiscriminately open fire, killing at least 6 and injuring many more before those 2 men were then killed by Israeli police. That is what we know so far. But again, Nicolle, the investigation is ongoing.
Erin McLaughlin, an incredibly intense and busy night of news. Thank you so much for talking to us about it. Joining our coverage, New York Times diplomatic correspondent Michael Crowley's here, and retired 4-star general, MSNBC military analyst Barry McCaffrey's here. Barry, take us through your assessment of what it means that Israel is saying that there will be a response, and it will be, it sounds like what they're trying to say is it will be a big one.
Well, they're chilling words. Israel is under massive attack from Gaza by the Hamas remnants, 10,000 of some who have been killed, from Hezbollah with presumably 120,000 or more rockets and missiles that they have not yet been able to deploy, to some extent from Syria, from the Houthis, and now we've seen the second state actor attack by Iran on Israel proper. And to our technical astonishment, they were able to defeat both these Iranian attacks. But at some point, the IDF has got to respond, and not just with a calibrated political gesture, but with a genuine attack. The Iranians are vulnerable to F-35 Israeli fighter aircraft. Their POL fuel system, oil fields are extremely vulnerable, and they'll go after the nuclear capability the Iranians have been painfully constructing. That may well trigger a regional war not wanted by any of the belligerents involved. So it's a tough situation. The Biden administration has been very good at trying to head off regional war. Secretary of State Tony Blinken, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. But at this point, we have no leverage. Israel is fighting for its existence.
General McCaffrey, let me show you what former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert had to say on this.
I believe that there will be a counteroffensive by Israel, and it will be a very painful counteroffensive. I don't think that Israel wants to expand this into an all-out war with Iran, but I don't think that there is any country in the world which would have been attacked by 180 ballistic missiles of this size, this nature, to the center of the country, and we're forcing 10 million people to sit in the shelters defending themselves from these missiles that wouldn't react in a manner that would deter the attacker from repeating what they did. And I hope that this will be the nature of our reaction tonight.
General McCaffrey, someone who chooses his words carefully, what does that mean, that it will be something that would deter the attacker from repeating what they did tonight, which was to launch 180 ballistic missiles? What is on the table from Israel's perspective?
Well, you know, the last attack in April, they fired 120 some odd ballistic missiles, of which 9 got through with very little impact on the target areas. One poor young girl was killed, but essentially it was a completely failed mission, and it was knocked down by CENTCOM forces coordinating primarily U.S. naval and air power, along with Jordanian support, as well as obviously the very sophisticated Israeli defense system. But this can't go on. You can't say, hey, you missed me again. These are 1-ton warheads. If a dozen of them hit apartment houses and schools and hospitals in Tel Aviv, there'll be significant casualties. And as you know, the flight time launch to impact on target is 12 minutes. So Israel cannot continue to live under this level of threat. What do they do about it? They have limited options. I think they're on the verge of going after the Iranians with high-value targets, not symbolic targets, and that certainly would include Iran's nuclear capability. And I might add, by the way, I don't think the Israelis can knock out the Iranian nuclear capability. It's too well protected. It's too far underground. The U.S. Air Force could do it if you gave them 60 to 90 days, but not the IDF. So we're on the verge of a different nuclear deterrent environment in the coming year.
Michael Crowley, what is your latest reporting?
Well, Nicolle, I think that right now the key issue in Washington is the Biden administration watching to see this Israeli response, doing their best to shape a response that is to some degree limited. I mean, we are in this incredibly delicate sort of stagecraft of these warring actors throwing military punches and counterpunches and trying to calibrate them in a way where ideally you strike a blow that makes you look strong, that satisfies hardliners and your own population that want vengeance, that want to strike out, but which doesn't escalate the conflict farther than you want it to go. And, you know, by all assessments, neither Iran nor Israel, and certainly not the United States, want this thing to spiral out into a total free-for-all. So what the Biden administration is trying to do right now is talk to the Israelis about what they're going to do. And is there a kind of strike that they can mount that strikes a blow at the Iranians, shows Israeli strength and power, but doesn't necessarily require a massive Iranian response? And what I think they really are looking for is a do-over of what happened in April. The Iranians fired 300 missiles and drones at Israel, similarly to this attack, although this attack was more dramatic because it involved ballistic missiles, which are more serious. There were basically no casualties. The damage was quite limited. And the Israelis struck back in a very targeted way against an Iranian air defense system near one of their nuclear sites, which really sent a message to the Iranians saying, we can get you anywhere, because that was a very modern, sophisticated air defense system, and it didn't stop the Israeli attack. And one reason I'm confident that the Biden administration is hoping we can see a replay of that, and this is my last thought, Nicolle, is that we're hearing similar rhetoric from Biden officials right now. Back in April, what they essentially said was, Israel successfully defended this attack. The attack failed. And they're saying it again now. This attack was a failure. Israel and the United States and its partners were able to stop it. They've condemned the attack. So they're trying to portray it as a failed attack and actually a show of Israeli and American and allied support in stopping the Iranians, and trying to set a tone where Israel doesn't have to flex too hard, doesn't have to throw a big punch. Very last thing I will say, if they go after the Iranian nuclear program, Katie bar the door, that's the crown jewel of Iranian governments going back decades. That could precipitate a wild escalation. There are hardliners in Iran who want to do that. I think it's possible. I think right now that could be a nightmare scenario for Biden officials.
You know, I heard what you're saying in both the President Joe Biden described it as a failed attack by Iran. But there seems to be an asymmetry, right? What the Israelis are talking about is the fact that 10 million people spent the evening in shelters and that they can't live like this. Are they sort of looking at different